So my first bold prediction were the Baylor Bears over Iowa State.
Sick 'em.
Iowa State, Cyclone Nation, I'm going to get to you a little bit. I'm going to get to you in just a little bit. And if you've just recently started listening, I would encourage you to go hear our first episode, kind of hear about some history between me and the Iowa State fan base. But I got something for you in just a second.
Love Trey Smith out of names.
But,
but
let's talk about the Baylor Bears for a second, led by Jerry Bohannon, who, mind you, is a Arkansas kid. Okay?
Oh, okay, I didn't know
he
that.
grew up, played in Earl, Arkansas. Bielema didn't really recruit him, and then Morris got hired and wasn't able to bring him over. Wasn't able to get him from, I think Matt Rule was the one that ended up getting him to Baylor.
Okay.
He's leading that team. I'm going to go ahead and say that's a sneaky team to watch in the Big 12 or the Baylor Bears, man.
Definitely.
They've since, obviously Matt Rule left, and it looked like the sky was falling, and man, they're getting things back in gear, and they took care of Iowa State. They got a big win, and I believe Baylor deserves to be in the top 25 this week.
Oh, yes.
And then I got to go here, so
come on.
I got the jersey on yesterday. Jerry World, AT&T Stadium, Southwest Classic. I did a game recap, but I had to stay objective. I had to stay very news anchory. Right now, this is the podcast. I'm about to let it all out that the Arkansas Razorbacks finally, for the first time in a decade, beat the Aggies, top 7 team, the number 7 ranked team, brought it to them. Our defense looked like we had Calzada and Jimbo Fisher basically chasing their tails all afternoon.
It's a great game.
Okay, Barry Odom is a legend in my book. He came in with a game plan like he does every single week, stifled the offense with other than one breakdown, which was the Isaiah Spiller 67-yard touchdown run. Other than that, they were clueless offensively. Offensively for the Razorbacks, if you watch that first half, we looked like the 2013 Baylor Bears, baby. It was a veer and shoot clinic. KJ Jefferson found Traylon Burks for an 85-yard one over the top. Then he found A.J. Green on a wheel route. Freshman running back A.J. Green on a wheel route who just bounced off A&M defenders, ran for, I think, a 38-yard touchdown catch and run. Here's what I'm going to say, okay? Arkansas goes to Athens, Georgia next week.
Game day. I think you guys got game day.
Play the number 2 team in the country, and one of the best defenses, not just, obviously, they're, in my opinion, the best defense in the country right now, but potentially one of the best college football defenses of all time when it's all said and done. Objectively speaking, I do not believe the Arkansas Razorbacks will win that game. Okay, we talked about in one of our previous episodes, there's 4 types of fans, right? There's the eternal optimist, pessimist, there's the realist, and there's the delusionalist. So the realist in me right now objectively does not believe Arkansas beats the Georgia Bulldogs. But here's what I'm going to say. If Georgia thinks this is the same old Razorback team of recent history, and they think they can just roll out of bed, show up, and put it on us, they've got another thing coming. Because this team is coming down to Athens to hit. They're coming down to bring a physical brand of football. We will run the ball. We will establish our identity, and if Georgia's just rolling out of bed, not prepared, I'm telling you right now, they've got something. They better be looking over their shoulder just a little bit, going, these dudes might come to town and shock the world. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if Georgia, for whatever reason, can't get themselves up and can't get themselves prepared because they're so used to the Razorbacks just being this team that, as some would say, have been the whipping boy of the SEC, get ready. Because like Barry Odom says, we're going to run and hit on you. And we're coming down to Athens to make some noise. And here's what I know is that when you've got the entire state, like Sam Pittman says it all the time, Arkansas is a proud state.
They are.
And when you've got the pride of the entire state behind this football team, it does something to the team. It's almost like it's a superpower. It's a magic power that is injected into the team when they know they're carrying the pride of the entire state. And I'm just telling you, when that's the case at the University of Arkansas, no one on the schedule is safe. Now, objectively, I do believe Georgia wins that game.
Okay.
But also objectively, it's going to be a lot different game, in my opinion, than what most people think it's going to be. Arkansas is coming to town to win that game. They're not coming to town to get a moral victory, to play them close, to hopefully just compete. Sam Pittman has established a culture right now that those Razorback players are preparing this week, not thinking, oh, man, we got to play Georgia. They're going, Georgia's got to play us.
Right,
and when you can get that mentality on your team, you know just as well as I know, Brandon, that's a dog mentality. And that's what Arkansas has been missing for the last several years. And you know, B, just as well as I do, that if you want to get a dog mentality on a roster that's not there, what do you got to do? You got to go find some dogs. And that's what Sam Pittman has done in a short amount of time. And he's compared it with the talent that was already there. He's united the locker room. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying we win the game. But if we go in there and shock the world and beat the number 2 team on the road this week, you heard it here first. That's why. It's because we've got that dog mentality. We've got the pride of the entire state of Arkansas. And when you've got those two things combined with this particular team, no team is safe. That's it. That's my spiel.
It's gonna be a great game, man. I mean, Georgia's defense has been impeccable, but man, I watched you guys like thoroughly throughout the whole game yesterday, and I was thoroughly impressed. Like, I mean, I've checked in on you, but yesterday I was like, oh man, like this is a good team, man, and it's a sneaky good team. Like, it's a team you think, it's Arkansas, but then you watch them play, and they play hard, they play physical. I'm interested to see what that happens, man. Next week, I'm gonna go into my bold predictions. So I had 2. My first one was NC State over Clemson. Ooh. We texted about that earlier in the week, and you were like, really? And I was like, yes, I like it. It's an away game for Clemson. Clemson looks shaky, but what most people don't understand, there's a beef between, I think it's Dave Duerson. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but the NC State head coach, and Dabo. And it goes back to like 2019. Like, Dabo's winning. They're winning by like 31 points, and so NC State punts the ball, and Dabo goes and runs the score up. And so like before he does it, Duerson calls a timeout to give him time to really think about it. Yeah, Doran. Excuse me, Doran.
Duerson was
Doran. Man, I butcher
former NFL
name.
player. No, but that is a player. That is an actual person. You're good.
So he calls a timeout to give Dabo time to think about it. And Dabo comes out the timeout and still runs the score up. And so there's like this aggressive handshake after. Obviously the media plays up. And Dabo's like, I'm just trying to run back with my team. There was, it wasn't. But Doran, man, like, has really held on to that. He's like, and I don't think they played last year. So this was the first time since that interaction that they're playing each other. And I knew it. I've been watching. If you guys have been listening since week 1, I have not been high on Clemson this year. I have not been high on Clemson. I'm looking at them, and I'm like, okay. And then you got this NC State team who's been sneakily playing pretty well. And I think unless you're a big college football fan or you pay attention to every region, you don't understand. NC State's a hostile environment to play in. Like, it's not a rollover program. You don't just walk into NC State and think, oh, man, we're going to win this game. It's an actually hostile environment. And obviously they get overshadowed because they're down the road from Duke, they're down the road from North Carolina, they're down the road from Wake Forest. So you kind of get lost in the shuffle. But I saw that coming, man, and they played them tight. And, man, it seemed, and this is what I believe Clemson is missing, it seemed as the game got tighter, the team played tighter. Dabo's been known to have his guys loose. Like, that's his thing. We're going to play loose. We're going to have fun. We're going to go out and play football, backyard football. It's like playing with your boys in the street. And they look tight, man. And they don't look like I was watching that game. I kind of had it on the iPad. And, man, they just don't look as athletic as they've always looked. Like, they just kind of look like a shell of themselves. And I think, man, it's allowed other teams. The early down in Georgia, we kind of gave it a caveat because Georgia's like the number 2 team in the country. We're like, okay, fine, whatever. But then, like, we watched them play the other week, and I was just like, I think they just showed the world that they're not as talented as they once have been. And they
can't just line up and beat the guy in front of them anymore.
They can't, and the offense hasn't developed. Like, and Bomani Jones from ESPN, I was reading him on Twitter yesterday, and he made a good point. He's like, oh, this has been the problem since Tosh was around. Like, they've just always trying to roll their dudes out. My dude can beat your dude. But the offense hasn't evolved. And then David Pollack made a good point, and I agreed. He goes, I've been saying it for 18 months. Trevor Lawrence, freshman year, is no different than Trevor Lawrence junior year. And we're talking about who's probably one of the greatest quarterback prospects to come out of college football in a long time. Looked really – and then when I went and started looking at games, and I was like, he's true. Like there was no like there. So I'm saying also to say I don't think Clemson develops talent really well. These guys just win off straight athleticism, and I don't think they got the guys to do that anymore. And I think the rest of the country's kind of catching up and realize the gimmick's over, man. Because now in college football, everybody has talent. Unless you're Bama, unless you're Georgia, like where you're just bleeding 5-star talent. Most of the time, man, most programs in Power 5 conferences is going to have a 4 or 5-star kid there. They're going to have a handful of high 3 stars. Like they can really, unless you're in the top echelon of college football, everybody can compete with you now for the most part. It's the talent disparity, the gap has kind of closed. So that was my big one. And then my second one, man, Wisconsin over Notre Dame. I thought they had it. I really thought they had it. And Wisconsin just shot themselves in the foot. They looked mediocre. They looked, in grammar. And it was a personal game because Jack Cohn from Notre Dame was the starting quarterback at Wisconsin. And then they brought in Graham Mertz. He was like a 4-star recruit. He's the savior. He's the new big shiny toy that comes on campus, right? This happens like every year with most programs. You get the new quarterback recruit. You want to see him. And, man, he just looked pedestrian. They couldn't get the run game going. And we know Wisconsin is pretty much like we're going to run, play action, pass you to death. And it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And I think you're going to kind of touch on this soon. But, like, it was a tough game till the fourth quarter. And the game flipped for me. Actually, when Jack Cohn went out and Notre Dame brought in their backup quarterback, Pine, who's a little bit more athletic, had a little bit more shake to him, who can escape the pocket, make some plays. And I'm going to say, like, Wisconsin, I think the only thing that was strong about them from what I saw was their linebacking core, which if Jack Cohn could have hit some passes, Trey, they would have blew Wisconsin out the water because that secondary is weak. It was just like one-on-one. Jack Cohn overthrew him like at least 4 or 5 wide open, or if he would have led the guy open. So I just, that was my other bold prediction. I think, Wisconsin isn't who we thought they were. They're also a shell on themselves. And maybe this could be the result of the pandemic, man, what has happened with a lot of these teams that allowed some teams to catch up and allowed some teams to regress. And I think that's kind of what we saw.